Thanks for joining us from different time zones. We are very excited to see everyone here and also super excited about that the people are excited about the topics we picked for our series of webinars these days. If you haven't met before, my name is Goli. I'm the VP of Customer Success at FlexRule, and I have Arash with me. Arash is the FlexRule founder. In our today's webinar, we are talking about an exciting topic from our viewpoint, which is how to unlock the value of business rules. And believe me, that would be a good element of surprises here, which you will see. Before we start, a few housekeeping items. First of all, we are recording this session. If for any reason that you need to jump off, don't worry about it. We will send you an email and provide the recording session later on to you. We love to hear from you. If there is anything that you'd like to share with us, for example, the next topic, what we should pick, that would be appreciated if you put it in the chat box and we take it from there. There would be a Q&A box on the bottom of the page, as you see. If there is any question, please put it there, because at the end of this session, we have allocated 12 minutes for Q&A. Great. Let's start with who we are. FlexRule is founded in 2008, based in Melbourne, Australia. Our mission is to empower all the leaders, business, operations, and technology to improve speed and quality of key business decisions in changing environments. We have customers around the world, Europe, North America, Asia Pacific, and very interestingly across different range of industries like finance, health, leasing, government agencies, and etc. Great. With no further ado, to start our exciting webinar, I'm handing over to Arash. Arash, all yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Okay, this doesn't work anyway. Okay, let's get it started. Excellent. So business rules are important, and I don't believe anyone in this audience at least has any objections to that. They guide us for behavior and action. They shape our judgment, and they help us to make decisions. They are very core of business operations, and they act like a nervous system of your organization. In certain projects, we need to pay a special attention to business rules. We will need to use business rules management system, decision management system, and many other technologies to make sure they are expressed very well and they don't have any ambiguity like what you see on the picture. Now, let's see what are those criteria that we need to consider for a specific project that we need to treat business rules in a very special and important way. So not every project requires that kind of treatment. So what are those projects? What are those areas? What are those businesses that need to treat their business as the core knowledge of their organizations? So they should be more than a handful of business rules. Just a couple of them, 1, 2, 3, 10, doesn't really classify as an important. They require business domain knowledge. So, for example, underwriting, for example, product offering, for instance, customer journey, for instance, pricing. These are the knowledge of people within organizations that they know how to do those, how to make those decisions. If that particular area in your organization's project requires to be compliant with regulatory laws, government bodies, policies, that's a special project or special area you need to pay attention to business rules. If the problem you're trying to solve is inherently complex in nature, for example, insurance requires multiple levels of reasoning. Outcome of a set of business rules will be input to another set of business rules. So that multiple levels of reasoning consider as a complex problem you want to solve. Other type of projects or area requires to adjust and configure numerous changes and parameters. For instance, product offering, for instance, mass personalization in consumer. So these are the areas that you need to pay attention. If you see them, you will need to use business rules management system. And lastly, a very important one, if delivery time to market is important for your project and involves rules, you probably need to pick a business rules management system or decision management system to make sure you can have the value and deliver the value for your organizations. And when we're talking about the value, what value do we get from these implementations? The first one is transparency, and it has three components. Explainability, which means you can explain to your customers why did you take a particular decision. Traceability and auditability, very important because particularly if you need to understand at runtime why are you doing what you're doing, you need the traceability. And if you need to be compliant to any government laws or regulatory, you need the auditability. So transparency is a very big component of this value that you get from implementation of business rules management system or decision management system. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Faster time to market. So in many projects, we see a significant delay because of implementation of changes. And the need for business is to test multiple markets, understand it quickly, and react to the dynamic of the market and be compliant as soon as possible based on certain events. So if the time to delivery is important, that's the value you can get from implementation of business rules management or decision management. Team collaboration. So many projects involve multiple key stakeholders, multiple different roles in organizations, from IT group, DevOps, developers, architect, to operation people and business stakeholders. They need to work and understand collaboratively what are those rules, what do they do, where do they apply. They need to be on the same page, and they need to have a single understanding and common understanding on what's happening. So that's where you get the value, and that's the value of implementing business rules or decision management suites in your organizations. And when the change is needed, the right balance of managing change between different owners from the business to IT, however you want to configure that and however you want to manage that, that's the value you can get from implementing business rules management systems or decision management suites. And we're going to talk about the differences in a bit. So these are the values you can get. And how do you get them? At the core of these solutions, they all work based on separation of concerns, meaning that you isolate the changing components, in this instance is business rules. You manage their life cycle independently. So when change happens, you can change the business rules independent of the business processes and applications and information systems that are in place in organizations. So there is no need for big IT release or development of the software and going through the whole change management of the software processes, software development processes. And then thirdly and most importantly is you empower other people and other groups to take the ownership of making those changes, not just IT. However, there are 7 deadly sins that will kill and compromise all the values you would have expected to get from business rules management system and decision management suites implementation. So I'm going to go through all of them quickly, and then we're going to talk about how to avoid them and what are the solutions. First, rule-driven approach. It's kind of strange because we're talking about importance of the rules, but rule-driven approach, meaning people going to organization, to special part of organization for a specific project or area, and they start capturing everything about all the rules, like all business rules are equally important. That's not the case, and that drives the bad behavior implementation, costs far too much time and money to implement the project. Don't do that. Another area is when the application modernization initiative happens, lift and shift from legacy system to new system, the way they implemented rules from the older system, legacy system, they do it the same in the new implementation. That doesn't help. It's going to kill the value, and it's not going to let you to take advantages of the new approach and new technologies. We've seen that so many times when it involves business process professionals, the kind of thing, everything is process, but it's not. So they use the process modeling for modeling decisions, modeling rules, modeling everything. So that's not the case. It makes a terrible, very complex business process model, which is hard to execute and hard to maintain and hard to model. So don't do that. There is a tendency to think about business rule engine are similar to business rules management system and similar to decision management suite. That's a big mistake and big sin because when we're talking about the business rule engine, it's a component in software development practice used by software developers, software architects to isolate the change within their applications inside the software. It's not the same when we're talking about the business rules management system and decision management suite. It's about organizational change. How do we model rules? How do we deploy them? How do we monitor them? How do we measure the impact of the change in organization across multiple groups? So very different conversation. They're not the same. Giving too little credit to business users and operation group, and that is a big sin, and we've seen that happens a lot. From the early conversation to different vendors, involve the actual users, which is you're going to empower them, business operation people and SMEs and business folks, because these are the people that need to get the value from the implementation. Do not dismiss them, and don't give them too much little credit from what they understand of technology and how the implementation goes. This is kind of interesting because we've seen so many times that if machine learning is an alternative to business rules implementation, it's not. They inherently solve different type of problem. Machine learning is more probabilistic problem. Business rules is deterministic problem, and they need to go side by side to make sure the business decision operations are effective and efficient. They're not alternative to one another. And lastly, but not least, overlooking other changing components. When we implement business rules management systems or decision management suite, we think we just need to isolate business rules. That's correct, that's the core of it, but there are so many other different dependencies. So if the new data source is needed, if the data source structure and data structure changes, if the outcome structure we want to produce are different, so you need to isolate all the dependencies, and this is where we call the full cycle of decision. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but isolating business rules from the changes only is not the answer. So what do we need to do to address all of these things and redeem? There are two components to it. One is looking at the end-to-end decision automation, and that decision might be driven with rules, might be driven with Data and analytics might be decision-making process, might involve any other technologies that you might think. So it's not just about the rules, and it involves the end-to-end part of the changing components. So that's why it's called end-to-end decision automation. And the other component to it is decision-centric approach, meaning that you need to think about business decisions, and that's really a gap between the technology you adapt and to the business value that you need to deliver, which they need to be aligned with business objectives. And that's a very core important thing in your process. So let's have a look at that in more details. Decision-centric approach is a methodical approach that allows you to discover business decisions, capture them, and prioritize them based on high-value business decisions. Once you've done that, then you automate them end-to-end, meaning that you have to have the cover for all different stages of the OODA loop decision cycle, and then it allows you to scale, increase your operational capacity. And at the core of it, it's all about business decisions, as you can see in the picture. And why does that solve our problem? So there are many studies that have been done with different consulting firms. One of them, which is Bain & Company, in a study they've done, they concluded ultimately a value of company is the sum of all the decisions they make and execute. And by far, the organizations that focus on business decisions deliver far more value, and there is 95% correlation between decision effectiveness and financial results. So that's the answer to the question why business decisions, not structural change or process or other things within your organization. And the other component of that was end-to-end decision automation. So decisions in organizations are complex, and there are multiple different levels of decisions, from strategic, tactical, operational, so on and so forth. And there is not really a clear boundaries between these levels of decisions. Therefore, you will need to use multiple technologies to implement the automation for that particular decisions that you captured in decision-centric approach and prioritize them based on the value they deliver to organizations. So business decisions might be rule-driven decisions, might be data-driven decisions using different technologies such as AI, machine learning, including even the data and analytics and visualization, etc. The business decisions might be decision-making process, so you might need to involve different human to override the outcome of the decisions and take decisions. And you will need to integrate the result back into your organizations. You need to communicate to existing system and processes that they may not be brand new. So you need to have a way of communicating with them, even that if that's required to navigate through the user interface application automatically. So that's where the robotics come in place. So decision-centric approach plus end-to-end decision automation will let you to redeem to your themes. Now, what we're going to do is, at this point, I want to show you some examples in insurance, in car premium calculation, which is inherently a very complex calculation, and show you different parts of what we already discussed, and show you how you can isolate all the components together and make sure they have separate life cycles from the processes, from the application information system that you build, to ensure that you can change them quickly, accurately, and safely, and empower other people within your group, not only developers and IT, to take over these changes as they need it. Okay. So the environment you see is called Flex Rule Designer, and that allows you to model different things. What you see at this screen is the orchestration layer of Flex Rule Designer that allows you to build different components. As I mentioned, it's not only about business rules now. You're required to do the pre-processing, connect to different data sources, build the structure you want for the data, create the information and context, pass it to a business decision model, execute it, return the result, and do the post-processing. So that's what it involves from this model. Once you connect to the database, you create the context, then you need to do the actual calculation based on a business decision. Now, at the core of everything is that business decision you see on this screen. In this particular instance, we want to calculate premium of a car. Therefore, you can see that is stated with the rectangle on top of the screen. This particular model is called decision graph, so allows you to build multi-step decisioning. You can look at it from two different angles. First, from the dependencies of decisions. So a car premium decisions here has two dependencies, base premium and auto premium. And what that means is you need the result from base premium and auto premium first, and then that will feed to the car premium decision. If you look at from the auto premium point of view, this box, that has two other dependencies, car style premium and rating. And again, if you look at the rating, we have two types of rating, potential theft rating, occupant injury rating. And if you look at these pink round rectangles here, they represent data input to this particular set of decisions on my screen. So at the decision graph, that was a dependency point of view. You can look at it from other point of view, from decision flow. So you can say potential theft rating outcome and occupant injury outcome will go, follow the arrow, to the rating decisions. The outcome of rating decisions will go to premium. The outcome of the style premium will go to auto premium, and so on and so forth. So you can look at it from decision flow, and you can look at it from decision dependencies. Very importantly, not in this particular case, but there might be complex decisions that requires another decision graph. So you can link a decision graph to another decision graph to another decision graph, so you can build a complex hierarchical decision for your business decisions that you're modeling. So you can see very clearly at this point, we haven't involved even any technologies, and this is decision-centric approach. So it allows you to structurally break down the complexity of your business decisions to smaller, easier to understand decision units. Now, once you've done that, then you can go ahead and drill down to specific decisions and model them using business rules. Now, what you're going to see is all of a sudden, every business rules for this particular decision, I go back here. So from this decision, we drill down. So naturally, you just think about all the rules for these decisions, not all the rules in your organization or all the rules for your project, etc. So it focuses for a specific decision, and you can model the decisions with using business rules in this instance. You can model decisions with multiple techniques of business rules modeling. So this is a decision table. You can model business rules using natural language. And if I zoom in, the reason we say we call this type of rule modeling natural language, because you can naturally read through it. This is called R1, the name of the rule, and it says when car is convertible, then temp rating is high. So you can build your business glossary, you can build your business concept and fact concept and use them in modeling your business rules. And if we go back to the blueprint of the business decisions we want to make, you can see now you can bring the decision graph brings every single implementation of business rules together, the result of them, feed them to the next decision, and creates the outcome that we want. So that's really what it is about the decision. But if we go back to our actual orchestration model, that's where it is at this point. Let's say you want now to submit the result to another post-processing decision, because as I mentioned, let's assume the business rule changed. You needed now to include the result to the outcome of the whole the whole process that you're creating that decision, and application requires that extra information. Therefore, the outcome that you pass to the application or processes now has changed, it's structurally changed. Now you need to do the post-processing. So it's very simple. You just add another activity here, and you can do whatever you need to do to create that structure. So you can see it's not all about business rules. You need to be able to do the pre-processing, post-processing, execution of the decision, including business rules relevant to each individual decision, and send the result back to your business process, to your application, to information system, etc. Once you've done that, then also you can put your model in the debug simulation mode, and you can see how they behave. And that's very important. So if we go once again to our decision model, I'll show you another interesting concept in modeling business rules. So at the design time, what you see at this screen is design time, because there is no request coming in, it's not live, right? So what you can do, you can validate your business rules, ensuring that they are structurally correct. Also, what you can do is you can look for gaps between your rules or rules overlap. You can see, for instance, rule number 1 and 2 have overlap simply because we talk about whether the car is new or not, which is in these instances for rule number 1 and 2, they're false. But the age of the car has overlap, less than 6 and less than equal to 5. So at design time, you can identify the overlap and gaps between your rules within that particular decision. That validation is across any model you build in Flexrule Designer. So that's a decision graph, that was decision table, so on and so forth. Now, another interesting part of this is that you can put Flexrule Designer in debug and simulation mode, the transparency we talked about. So you can see exactly what's happening, where is it happening, how is it happening. So in this particular orchestration, this part of the model is pre-processing, which connects to database, creates the context, does the transformation at this level, and passes the information to the decision-making part. This is the decision graph. We just looked at it. And then once that is done, we do the post-processing part, and we return the result back to the consumer, whether that's a business process, applications, etc. And you can deploy this model as a service, so it becomes single source of truth for making this particular decision, calculating the premium of a car. Now, if you put this, I'll put this quickly in the debug simulation mode to show you that part as well. So once you've done that, you can simulate the execution, or you can debug the model in details as you want. You can go as detailed as you need to. So I skipped these details. I pass the valid information, so it's going to go and collect my data from the database. You can see all the parameters values for this particular execution in the parameters window. You can see here theft is null, meaning there is no value still read from the database. Once we execute this, you can see the values are collected from the database. You can look at the values, you can do search and do all good stuff with this particular data you collected. But that's not the data we want to pass to our decision model. This is operational data. We need to do the transformation. I don't go through the details of transformation at this stage for our time, but if I escape it, and if you look at the result of that transformation, you can see we transform the data from operational data to the data that is needed for the decision making. That's a very important part of this process. It's not hard-coded into your business processes or applications or anything. It's all encapsulated in an easy way, changing environment. Now, once you've done that, then we pass that information. We have everything ready to our decision model. And you can see now still the same behavior. You can follow the yellow arrow and yellow highlighting, and you can go to different step of execution for rules. You can go as detailed as you need to. I just skipped some of those details. I want to go to details of this particular decisions, for instance. I can see how the rules are behaving. And at this point, for example, we calculated auto premium and base premium for $250 each. And as we go to the next step, you can see based on execution of the rules, we're going to change the values. And when I stop this execution, you can see now the value's been updated for whatever the business rules are enforcing the value of the premium for that particular instance of the car. So just to really sum up what we did here, so we created an orchestration model. It is all about orchestrating our business decision at this point for pre-processing of business decision and post-processing of business decision and sending the result to the consumer. And when we're talking about the consumer, there are many different options to expose this particular model to whole dependencies, all the models you created as a service. It can be serverless deployment through the cloud provider we built in support Azure, AWS, and Google, or you can make the infrastructure for execution using Flexrule Server. Now the option is yours, and once you've done that, the whole model becomes a REST API. So your consumer, whether that's application or information system or mobile application, web application, business processes, can pass the information for processing to this particular model, exactly what you saw in the simulation mode. It processes the request and it returns the result as a JSON object to the consumer, whoever it is. So I just pause here to see if we have any questions, colleagues.
Yes, we have a couple of questions, Arash. First of all, one of the questions is that what is the difference between decision management system and business rule management system?
So decision management suite, we call it, and business rules management system. So it's the evolution of how business rules are packaged and offered to organizations. Started all from, at the core of them, a component of them, both our business rule engine allows you to execute business rules. However, business rules management system are geared only toward modeling and managing business rules. But as technology evolves during the recent years, we see many data-oriented decisions are needed for making organizations work effectively and efficiently and making good decisions. There are many different algorithms to execute as part of the decisions. For example, in machine learning algorithms, in statistical algorithms, etc. So in order to include all of them toward the execution of the business decision, decision management suite was born. Now, therefore, naturally, decision management suites are superset of business rules management system. The difference is they have the component for execution, machine learning, AI algorithm within your decision model.
Okay, that's it. The next question is the question that we always get it, Arash, and it's about the deployment. The model that we built in here, what are the deployment options for us?
I quickly showed you the deployment model, and that's a very interesting discussion. So when you build any model in FlexRule, you have generally two options, two broad options. You either want to go serverless deployment microservices architecture, you want to go build the infrastructure for executing business decisions and execute them on your own infrastructure using container and VM or however you want to manage them. So by default, we support 3 cloud providers for serverless deployment you see on my screen. Azure Function, AWS Lambda, and Google Cloud Function. So you can, with the single of the click, you can publish the model to a serverless infrastructure of your cloud providers, or you can use another product of FlexRule called FlexRule Server here, and you can build the infrastructure for executing models that you build in FlexRule Designer using FlexRule Server, and there are multiple different options for deployment. You can use container, Kubernetes, virtual machine, however you want to manage that infrastructure.
Okay. I don't see any more questions coming on the chat, but you're always here to answer your questions. If there is anything that you need to ask us, please don't hesitate to ask. Arash, I guess we can wrap it up.
So I see another question here with Miguel.
It just came up. Yeah, the Miguel said that the rules used are very clear and follow a path. Does the tool allow rules such as the one used by for an expert system where the path is decided by the ES engine? Yeah,
absolutely. So in FlexRule, the engine is capable of executing the rules in different manner, whether that's forward chaining, backward chaining, or in combination. So it absolutely allows you to execute that. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. If there is any, I cannot see any more questions, Arash. I guess we can wrap it up.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and see you next time.
Great. There would be a series of webinars that we scheduled for this year. Thanks for joining us today, and we will inform you about what would be the next topic that we pick for our next webinar.
And you can choose the topic. Send an email to info@flexrule.com if you will.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good night.
Bye.